Hello, Skye. Have I pronounced
Hi.
well your name?
Yes, it is Skye Sweetnam. You got it.
Perfect. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. It's a beautiful day here, and yeah, we're just trying to get as much done, but it's morning time for me, so similar for you.
Well, it's time to be to be awake. Well, you released the last on May 7th your album Initiation. Um, what are your feedback of the people or for your fans of this album?
It's been really great. We've been really lucky to have so many new people discover our band in the past few months. We have a wider reach than ever with Napalm helping us out on this release. And what's really great is that we are still true to our sound. So our fans seem to really love this record. I feel like it's a favorite so far of the records we've done, which is always good to just keep doing better and better. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Hmm. As you said, this is your first album with Napalm Records. How did this relationship start?
So in 2017, one of the members of the Napalm team came and saw us play live at Webster Hall in New York. And then it wasn't until 2 years later that we finally had another opportunity in New York where the rest of the team could come see us. And we were opening up for another band on Napalm Records, Ginger, which they're amazing. So, it's always hard as a new band to kind of introduce yourself to a crowd that's waiting for the band that they want to see. But when Napalm saw that we were able to win over the crowd, everyone was jumping around, moshing, having a great time. They're like, okay, we got this. So, yeah, and then we signed with them early 2020. So that was right before the pandemic. So we just kind of signed the deal and then all hell broke loose.
And how was for you this pandemic? Because you have released the album now, when the situation seems to be better with the machine and all the stuff. Well, at least in North America, because in Spain nowadays, I think we don't have the machine too much developed as in Canada or United States, right?
Well, right now in Canada, we're still in a severe lockdown. So we can't go anywhere but for essentials. So it is still kind of a strict situation here. And during the pandemic, there was talk, and I think a lot of bands had this talk with each other of do we release music now or wait and hope that we can possibly release it closer to when we could tour, because touring is such an important part to any band promoting their record. And I think we waited long enough because we had a record that was pretty much ready to go early 2020. But with everything that kind of happened, we thought, you know what, let's just feel out, how the situation is going, how long we think this is going to last. And in the meantime, we just wrote a bunch more material. So without the pandemic, we probably wouldn't have the record that we have now because we wrote about half of those songs at the early part of 2020 and then finalized them at the end of the year. So it was kind of like a lot of stops and starts with the record, but I think in the end it was a good thing.
Well, if you see that in that point of view, yes. And in a musical way, you have lived the pandemic with that positive point of view, as you said. But in a personal way, how have you lived this pandemic?
Yeah, obviously it's been like terrible situation and I felt completely lost at the beginning of all of this because I think as a person that watches all this news and all that's happening in the world, it was can you hear that?
Yes, I can hear you, but there is some stuff in the house close to mine.
Oh,
So
next door.
I
Okay.
There is some stuff in the house close to mine, so I turned down my volume.
Okay, no problem. Um, but yes, we all I think struggled at the beginning of this situation, and for me it was like a lot of personal ideas of what I was to contribute to the world when the world to be going crazy, and I felt helpless. I was just watching all this news happen on a screen and felt like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't keep living my life. If, I think a lot of people felt that kind of stagnant, you're stuck in your home and every day kind of starts to feel repetitive and the same. And for me, it was a very like soul crushing experience from, being able to be with people that I love and travel and play music and all this joy that that brings me. It was, the opposite was happening because I was kind of closed off. So it took me a while to even want to write music again and to even explore some of the emotions that I was feeling through it all. So I can never say that it was like a good thing that the pandemic happened. Obviously, it's a horrible thing, but the way I dealt with it was really bad at the beginning. And then as it got to the end, I started realizing that I've got to make the best of the situation and life goes on, and I need to kind of channel all that frustration into the music.
Yeah. And so, do you think if you had a tour right now, do you think you would be ready for a tour?
Well, we started rehearsals. We're back trying a little bit to get back into the groove. Obviously, that's been interrupted with all the stay-at-home orders that we have, but we're trying to get back to it. We're optimistic that we'll be probably touring by the end of the year. So fingers crossed, everything goes well and we can get back on the road.
And if I'm not wrong, this is the 10th anniversary of the band.
Yeah, we've been around for 10 years. It's really weird. Like as I get older and time passes, it is a weird phenomenon when you realize you've been doing something for so long. It's been such a important part of our life. So yeah, so it's pretty crazy, but we're very happy about it. Being able to survive as a band for this long and kind of overcome all the obstacles, and we're still here surviving through a pandemic. So we'll work pretty hard. Nothing can stop us. We're just going to keep doing what we do.
Do you have some plans of a possible celebration of this 10th anniversary, or how do you prepare?
Yeah, you know what? We never really, it never really crossed our minds until earlier this year. And I saw a fan post about it, and I was like, oh my God, it has been 10 years. So there's not like a huge, obviously, we can't host a real event, but it would be kind of cool, I think, to maybe work on a project. I have an idea in my mind of something that kind of takes a little bit of every single moment of Sumo Cyco and kind of make something a cool release, such as like a book or potentially a documentary, kind of chronologically telling our story. So I think some of that could be cool. It's a lot of work, so it's still in the works, but yeah, it's on my list, my very long list over there.
And I've been watching the Instagram account of the band, and it says something like alternative punk, dancehall, and metal. What is it?
Yeah.
I've been listening to the new album initiation, but I want you to explain me what is that.
Well, for us, our guitar player, he calls it whatever core because he's like, it doesn't matter what genre it is. If we like it, it's going in. And I look at our music as kind of like a real tasty soup or something, like a dish that you have to cook, and you got to put in a little bit of punk and a little bit of metal, a little bit of dance hall, a little bit of calypso beat, have some really good like underneath a bass of some like crazy metal drumming and some wicked riffs that get stuck in your head, and then layer that with like an icing of like pop and vocals that just ooze melody, and then these little like shards of glass that like hit you when you least expect with a bit of that metal screams and breakdowns. So it is an eclectic mix, but at the end of the day, we are a rock band. We love heavy music. So to me, that is basically our base is heavy music and rock, and then we just kind of expand out from that.
Yeah, and well, for example, my favorite song of the album is Bystander.
Thank you.
But there are songs which are so different one to another. For you, what kind of song is your favorite? Because they are too different.
Yeah, I think it shows like a different side of myself and Matt. So Matt and myself are the main two writers of the band, and he produces everything, and I mostly write the lyrics and melody. And we both have very different ways of approaching music, what we like, what we don't like. So what Sumo Cyco is where those things intersect. So a song usually starts off with Matt and I doing this, like battling with each other of what I like and what he likes. And then eventually we got to get to the point where we, find those sweet spots that we both love. And it's true that a song like MIA is so different from Bystander, which is so different from a song like This Dance is Doomed or, Power and Control. But to me, those are the weird places that our minds kind of find each other and intersect our love of music. So they show different sides of myself. I mean, I have a soft side, I have a heavy side. So I think it's important to realize that we're not like one dimensional, and everyone has a story to tell, and they'll have things that they'll love one moment and hate the next. And I love exploring the boundaries and really trying to creep into all the nooks and corners and try different things that maybe isn't our core, but is a place that we want to explore. So for me, I think you're right. A song like Bystander can show people at a glance what Sumo Cyco is, but to really be like a true psycho, I guess you could call it, you need to know all the different sides to our personality.
Yeah, and well, you are becoming more popular here in Europe, but in our case in Spain, Sumo Cyco is not very popular. Why do you think this could happen?
Well, we've never been to Spain to tour, first of
Yeah.
all, which I would love to come. Barcelona is like one of my favorite cities I've ever been to in my entire life, and I've been to Spain once in my
I'm
life.
here.
You're in Barcelona?
Yep.
That's awesome. I love Barcelona. I was able, when I was 16, I was able to travel there, and I loved it. It was beautiful. Just eating paella, and we went to an island. I forget the name of the island, but it was just like magical. But anyway, I love Spain, but unfortunately Sumo Cyco has never been able to tour there yet. And we would love to try to get out to Spain and a lot of other countries that I think would really enjoy our music. We just need to get out there. And for us, being an independent band for so long before we signed with Napalm is really the first time we've been able to reach some new people like yourself, and they've reached out to a wider audience with their reach, and they know all the different outlets that could possibly help spread the word about our band. So up until this past year, since it's just been independent, we haven't had the right connections to even get out to all the places that we want to get out. So I think the more we have help from the right places, hopefully more people will learn about Sumo Cyco and will grow in those territories.
So, if you come in a possible European tour, will you play here in, well, Barcelona or Madrid or in Spain or wherever, or are you planning the dates?
Well, right now we just have some stuff I can't quite announce for England and UK, but we're hoping that the next step from there will be to come to Europe. And there are so many new places that we want to go, and obviously, like I mentioned, Spain's on the list. So we're just bucking our agents, and hopefully it'll happen. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And
Yeah.
well, um, I've been looking for your past music, and I become you were who sang I don't know how to pronounce right now, tangled up in me.
Yes.
And I was like, what? So you were one of the teen stars. How
Yes.
how did you deal with that success in that moment, because you were teen?
Yes. Well, it is a weird upbringing when from 12 years on I was working full time as a singer and songwriter musician. I didn't have a typical high school experience. I was always traveling. Like I said, I was in Spain and I showed up the first time and we played this really cool arena that was an old bull ring, and I just showed up to sing my song and everyone knew the words, and I had no idea that people in Spain even knew who I was, let alone I was going to walk on stage and everyone was singing. It was like crazy experience. But with those highs also came really big lows, because I had to deal with not only growing up and finding my own identity, but I had issues with the label and lawsuits and managers, and I struggled with making money, even though things were doing really well for certain parts of my career. Other parts weren't doing so well. And it was a lot of pressure. And I had to learn so fast, being so young, on how all this works. I didn't, I just wanted to have fun, be a teenager. And little did I know I'm trying to run a business and dealing with employees. And it was crazy. So I needed a break. And when it all kind of came crashing down, I had a choice. I could either give up and just be like, you know what, this is too hard. I need to go, find a house back in Canada and settle down and not try this anymore. Or I can take what I learned and pick myself up on my, feet and walk and charge forward and try something completely new and not be ashamed that things didn't work out with my pop career, that I had some awesome memories, but now it's time to move on. So I've tried to have a really good attitude about it and use those experiences as fuel for my writing, and really look at what's important in life. And that to me is being authentic and true to my art. And if that means that some business things I got to push to a side to do what I love, I'd rather do what I love than try to pretend doing something else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and of course, it was 12 years ago, or I don't know, but um, what would you say the Skye of the present? What would say to to that famous Skye teenager?
Well, I would just say to, live every moment like it's your last. Enjoy every single cool thing that happens to you and take more notes. Take notes about the way that certain executives and people, work in the industry, because if you want to learn this going forward as your career, the more you can soak in the moment, the better it is. So one thing as a teenager, I would meet all these important people from different parts of the business, and I would just forget their names, and I would just be like, la 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 la, I just want to have fun. Where's the cutest boy over here? Like my head was not into the business, you know what I mean? And now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, whoa, like I met some really amazing, cool people in the business that I love that I just didn't keep in contact with because I was just in another world at that point. So it's easy to say that, but at the same time, I had to have a childhood, and that's what it was. So it's a weird childhood, but it was a good one.
So, do you regret of that kind of attitude of that moment?
No, I don't regret it. I had so many awesome memories, and I did learn so much. As much as I could have learned even more, I have taken away so many pieces of information that have helped me with building Sumo Cyco, that I had, steps above somebody who is in their early 20s just getting started in the industry. For me, I had already had like 10 years under my belt. So that's really invaluable. And I was also able to experience some cool things, like before MP3s were huge, like when I first started my career, it was still like records were still selling. I still got to go to a record store with a huge poster of my face on the side and stuff, like weird things that would happen that, you know, uh, now I'm like, wow, we live in such a different digital age. So it was kind of cool seeing everything change, but there was a lot of struggle as well. So everything is like a scale. As long as you have like some good with the bad, it kind of evens itself out.
Hmm. And I've seen you are also on TikTok, and for me, I don't know about TikTok. I'm like like a boomer, like the young people says. And some of the videos are under 1,000 views, but I've seen one of them who has 65,000 views. Do you think that TikTok is a good platform for the artist, because it's quite different of the others?
Yes, it is. I'm like you. I just feel like I'm starting to understand how it works. It's from someone that edits videos for years. Editing on a platform like TikTok is really backwards to the way that I've like learned how to, manipulate film and to put in edits. Like the fact that you have to do everything in a specific order, it's really confusing. And to me, I would have designed the app completely differently. But I do understand why bringing new apps in is important, because when fans are on TikTok, they're also getting exposed, just kind of like how Spotify will automatically just like play music even once you're finished your playlist. It always just will bring you more stuff that it'll think you like. And that is a discovery, a way to discover things. And I think it is, in some senses, I do realize how people can pine for the past and the way that it used to be. But I also understand that the way that people discover music is a lot different than how they used to. And for me, I think TikTok is one of the new apps that you kind of just have to be where the trends are. And for me, it's important to be part of it. Whether or not our videos get tons of hits or not, it's still a learning process. And I would say to anyone out there, if you can't do 100 posts, then you haven't learned the app yet, because you need to get experience doing it to get good at it, just like anything. If you picked up your guitar for the first time, you would not be good at it. You have to practice a bunch of times. And for me, that's what TikTok is. It's about practicing a bunch of times to do videos until I see, oh, that's the video that gets the most hits. That's how I should work. So it is a bit of hard work to make it happen. But if that's something you want to do to get more exposure, I would encourage young artists and bands to post themselves singing and playing guitar and doing whatever they want on the app. But it is harder for people who grew up in a different era to kind of adapt to those
Yes,
things. I do think so.
I feel you. And most of the users of TikTok are so young. Do you think that you can find a part of your band or of your fan base in that section or in that age?
Definitely. I do feel I've seen parents bringing their kids to shows. I've seen teenagers tell me it's their first show that they've ever been to when they come to a Sumo Cyco show, that they've never been to a live concert before and it's their first one. So there's lots of different ages that I think can get into our band. And for me, I always think that music is a universal language, and there's always something that someone can take from it, whether it's just they love the power of the sounds of the instruments, or they connect to the lyrics, or they connect to me as a person, feeling like they can relate. There's different ways people relate to bands, and it's not always just one way to like a band. So for me, I do think that all ages can get into Sumo Cyco, no problem.
And talking about your previous tours, how would you rate your tours with Sumo Cyco? Because, as you said, you had some big tours on your own career when you were teen. How would you rate your tours with the band?
Amazing. I mean, the most fun I've ever had. I think with building a band from the ground up is very different from building what I did with my pop career. With my pop career, it was completely dependent on industry professionals sending me off on big, expensive, you know, things that they connected. It wasn't built from the fans up. And with Sumo Cyco, we don't have any industry connections helping us. It was the fans that literally proved to the industry later, 10 years later, it took us to get a record deal, because it was that we grew fan by fan by fan by fan, just slowly, surely growing out from the center. And with my pop career, it was like, you know, meet some of the biggest executives in the world and just kind of like hope that the public likes what you're putting out. So it's a very different way of building a band. And there's, as someone who's experienced it both ways, there's really cool experiences you get from, you know, doing things the kind of pop industry way, but there's not anything that compares to the satisfaction you feel as an artist when you've literally built something from the ground up, like a little baby that you've grown, and every single year that you nurture that baby, it gets bigger, and you just have so much pride and honor when people accept that piece of art, like Sumo Cyco. When people accept that into their lives or get a tattoo, it means so much more to us, because we've just really worked so hard to get to where we get. And we've had awesome shows. I mean, we've played Download Festival in front of 10,000 people that we thought no one was going to show up to our tent, and it just got flooded with people. Our last few headline tours in UK were just like awesome, tight, sweaty clubs packed with a couple hundred people, and I love that stuff. So for me, it's different, but it's amazing, and it's so much fun. And me and the boys, I think, are really, really lucky to live the life that we live now, to be able to travel, you know, hopefully get back to traveling and just doing music. You know, music is what we love to do. So if we can do that, we're happy campers.
And when have you had the biggest amount of people in a concert? For example, that time at Napalm Festival with Sumo Cyco, or with your own project back in time?
Well, the biggest show I think I ever did was in Boston on it was the 4th of July, Boston. I opened up for Ashlee Simpson, and I think there was about 30,000 people there. So that was probably the biggest show that I've ever done. But I also played like on the Jay Leno show, so there's like, you know, millions of people watching that. So sometimes you can let that stuff get you nervous, and sometimes it just like went off in my stride. I'm like, oh, just played this show, whatever. It doesn't mean anything. I want to find where the cute boys are. Like, it was like, you know, as a teen, it didn't mean the same as I think having this experience now and realizing how hard it is to get those opportunities. You know, now I think if that were to happen again, I would be a lot more in the moment. And like I mentioned, like when you're young, you kind of just think, oh, everything, you know, is just going to come. That's fine. Life's great. And then sometimes some, you know, heartache or tragedy hits, and you realize, okay, life doesn't always work out great in your favor. And I think it takes a while to learn that as you're growing up.
And what has been your smallest amount of people in a concert? Because you have had thousands of people, but how was the opposite situation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, probably like 30 people, maybe. I think we
Not
played a
bad,
show in Vienna. Sorry?
No, not bad, 30 people.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we played a show in Vienna, and it was about, maybe 25, 30 people, but I ended up telling everyone that they could just get on the stage with me. So we all just got on the stage and just had like an awesome time, just like jumping around. Like, you know, it really is about making the best of a situation. There are no bad shows if you let it be a bad show. I mean, I've had amazing times with just myself or one other person. Why can't we invite the audience to be that close to us and feel like they get special treatment, or they're feeling like it's an intimate experience that they, you know, want to take with them? And to me, it's never a negative thing. There's stuff that happens all the time. I toured with Britney Spears, and then the next tour we did, I was touring around Walmart parking lots at 3 p.m. when every kid was in school and they expected a crowd to show up. I was like, there's nobody showing up. There's just shoppers, like parents going in to get their things. Like, this is ridiculous idea, but I had to get through an entire tour of kind of crappy shows, and you try to keep your mental state like, oh, things are still going well, it's still good. And then the next thing you know, you're playing like, another huge venue, and you're like, why was that such a fail? But this was so amazing. And I heard a story about Dolly Parton, who played one of her worst sold concerts tours ever. It was terrible. They're like, they didn't even sell out some of their theaters. And then a new manager came in and was just like, you know what? You're just not marketing this right. You just have to do this. And then her next tour was like her biggest she's ever had. So sometimes it's not always about the success of a band that reflects. It sometimes can just be like poor planning, or, agents not really realizing their market properly. Lots of things can happen, and it's important not to get yourself down on it and let it define you, and just keep pressing on.
Yeah. So, as you said, you have toured with Britney Spears, or that shows in the parking of the Walmart. What highlights or anecdotes do you remember for that period? Because you have said just a few things, but for me it's like, oh damn, Britney Spears can make a stadium shout. So what anecdotes or highlights do you remember?
Oh, well, just so many things. I mean, the experience is great, don't get me wrong, but I did see a little bit of, like, I don't know if you have followed the Free Britney movement, but I do relate. There's another video that Alison Stoner put out. She's a child, she was a performer in Missy Elliott videos, and she was on the Disney Channel, and she did a lot of things. And I've realized a lot of things about the industry that aren't so kind to especially young females. And I remember having a lot of experiences where I was over sexualized. I would go into radio stations and they would make jokes when I was like 15 about how big my lips were, but they would be speaking in like a different language and I wouldn't know what they were talking about. And I'd feel self-conscious, and then I'd have like an interviewer ask me if I was a virgin, and like I'm just like a 15-year-old kid, and I'm like, what is going on with this? Like, why do people need to know that about me? Like, I'm just trying to make music. And there's a lot of situations that I can see that happened on the Britney tour that, they worked her hard. She did not have time to, take a break, because the entire industry, the pyramid of all those people, the buses and lighting techs and everyone, they depend on her to put food in their families' mouths. So I can understand the pressures of being in those positions. And for me starting out, everything was just roses and sunshine, and like, cool, I get to play these awesome shows. It's so cool to tell my high school friends I'm opening with Britney Spears. But there's a lot of things that you see now that you're older, looking back, that it was kind of not cool that we didn't treat her like one of the crew because she was the star. We put her on a pedestal. No one was allowed to talk to her because she was the famous one, the star. And, it kind of dehumanizes someone, I think, a bit. And I just think we need to be careful in this industry of how we treat, celebrities in general, or artists in general, that, that they are human. So that's why I think that with Sumo Cyco, I've always built things fan by fan and really tried to have a human connection with our fans and make them realize, like, we're not some kind of unattainable, like, people on a pedestal. We're just normal people struggling to get through, like everyone, trying to figure out, what moves we can make so that we can make a living and do what we love. And there's struggle, there's triumph. And so I think that that's something I've learned over the years, that if I take anything away, it's to try to be a good human throughout it all, and try to remember your morals throughout all the craziness of the business.
Yeah. And you said you had to suffer some situation when you were 15 with some uncomfortable interviews or something like that. Do you think you knew on that time the darkest side of the industry?
Yeah, I definitely got a sense of it. I mean, from a young age, I was around drugs all the time. Alcohol was, brought into my life really, really early because of being around adults. Like, if you imagine, like, I was 14, 15 years old, and I didn't have anyone my own age around me for months. It was always people in, older positions of power. So I learned to kind of mature and kind of like change myself to adapt to that situation. But I also kind of lost a lot of innocence, I guess, pretty fast of like what adult situations I needed to get into. And um, for me, there was definitely some even issues with some producers and co-writer situations where they made me feel completely uncomfortable, like, that inappropriate touching and saying comments that were sexual, that like to me, I'm not interested in and anybody at that age. I was just, I was kind of naive to a certain extent, right? And so I think that it's important, and like some of what Allison Stoner says, and I recommend everybody check her out on YouTube. She's just so well spoken, but it is true that when you're thrust into adult situations at a very young age, it does change how you develop. And I do believe that under the wrong circumstances, if I didn't have awesome parents, if I didn't have awesome friend groups, that I could have ended up like a lot of like child celebrities do, where you kind of turn the wrong directions down a road and end up kind of in a dark place. And thankfully, I had ways to channel my energy, and I had people around me that kept me kind of going the right path so that I didn't get too dark into like some of the deep sides of the industry, that I kind of was able to always come back home and had my head on my shoulders, So that was really important.
Yeah. And when you are on tour, do you have some routines before or after the shows?
So for me, it's all about trying to get into a relaxed state before I go on stage. I use the time that I do my makeup for stage as kind of like a meditation time in a way. So I'll do my makeup and I'll try to isolate myself from everyone if I can. And usually I'll light like a little candle and have some tea and just really kind of focus in on warming up my voice and just feeling really good and powerful. I really do like having a few moments alone, like with no one around right before the show. And then usually I'll come in, and the shock of going from like this Zen state to like a super noisy, crazy loud club with like people running around getting the gear ready and all this pandemonium gets my adrenaline going like really, really fast. So I go from like a really like calm state to like a really, really excited state really fast. And then I think that fuels my power to go in really hard on stage. Like right away, I got that like burst of energy, and I'm like, whoa, let's do this. So that's how I like to roll.
And the last question, what's the most glamorous thing you have lived for a concert or in a tour or whatever?
Well, there's been some crazy, awesome moments. Even when I got signed to Capitol the first time, they had me on the top of the Capitol building looking over Hollywood and took me out to a fancy dinner. I told the president of the label, like, hey, he's like, what do you want so that we can sign you? And I was like, oh, chocolate chip cookies, because I'm 14 years old. And then I show up at the restaurant and there's like tables of chocolate chip cookies. I'm like, I didn't know it was gonna come true. Like I should have asked for like a car or something. Like why did I ask for chocolate chip cookies? So that was kind of like a magical moment where you're like, whoa, like this is kind of like living in like Alice in Wonderland, where your wish is their command. But soon after that, I didn't have as much of the superstar treatment because you go back to kind of work mode. But I mean, there's just been so many really cool moments. With Sumo Cyco, we got flown out to Vegas to do a show, and they put us up in the suite at the Bellagio. And they had us there for 2 nights. And the first night, part of our party, like part of the bands that we were touring with, they had to stay behind to do a show. So it was only 4 of us that got to go to the suite the first night. And it was like huge, awesome. We each got our own bed. We were living in the lap of luxury. It was amazing. And then the next night, all the rest of the bandmates and crew all came into the same room, and it was pandemonium because there wasn't enough places for everyone to sleep. So it was like what you watch in The Hangover, where like people are like making beds out of like the dining table and putting like cushions all over the ground, and you wake up and there's like 15 people like just like passed out on every surface. So those kind of moments make you feel like, am I in a movie right now? Like this seems really kind of crazy, but good times, yeah.
So let's see if there are more good times, and hope to see that kind of good times here in Barcelona, for example.
Yeah.
So
Would love to come to Barcelona and party.
yeah, when you come, you can call me and we'll go and party.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so Skye, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and as I said, hope to see you soon here, and congratulations for the new album initiation.
Thank you so much, man. It was a lot of fun talking to you too. Take care.
Take care.